Hey guys, it's Mark here. I told you guys I would make a simple antenna modification video for the H501s standard transmitter, and also a battery modification if you don't have the JST connector built into the battery compartment. First thing you are going to need is a small Phillips screwdriver. You can use one of these or one of these. You're also going to need a hot glue gun. And for the battery mod, you may not need anything, but if you don't have a JST connector built into this in the back, which I'll show you, you're going to need a soldering iron, or that's a soldering station, but you're going to need a soldering iron and some solder if you need to do a battery mod. But the newer controllers come with JST connectors. Alright, so here's the back of the controller. And if you look down in the battery compartment here, there's what they call a JST connector right there, the little red thing. It's kind of rectangular, but it does have a little grooves on the bottom, and that is so you can only plug it in one way so you don't reverse the polarity. And if you have a newer controller, like say you just bought yours, they should have this already built in. If it doesn't, you had an older style transmitter sent to you. I don't know if they were trying to get rid of excess inventory, but a newer controller should have a JST connector inside the battery compartment or battery caddy, which is great because you don't have to solder anything. There's no battery modifications besides some Velcro. And then I showed you this battery already. It's a 1200 milliamp 2-cell 25Z 7.4 volt LiPo, and this battery works awesome for this controller. It's it's not a big battery, but you don't need one for the controller. This, I've had like 10, I think it was 12 flights, and where it shows on the front, where it shows the battery voltage, I've had like 12 flights and it only went down one notch. So this is a great battery, and all you got to do is put it on the Velcro, and it does not get in your way when you're holding it. And then all you got to do is plug in the JST connector. Boom. Done. There's no battery modifications necessary as long as you have that JST connector built in. If you don't, then you need to open this up and which I'm going to do in a second, and you need to solder and then modify this a little bit to have a JST connector or any connector of your liking, but never exceed 7.4 volts on the standard transmitter, because the circuit board is capable of 4 AA's is what's supposed to be in there, but you'll be chewing through them like nothing. You'll be buying new batteries every day. I don't even care if they're rechargeable nickel metal hydride. A LiPo is the best. It gives you the most power. You can fly this thing over and over and over and never have to charge this, barely ever. But do not exceed 7.4 volts with a LiPo battery. If you put an 11.1 volt battery on here, you're probably going to fry the electronics, because a 7.44 volt LiPo, when it's fully charged, charges to 8.4 volts. It's 4.2 volts per cell, in parallel, that runs to the JST. So if you put an 11.1, those charge to 12.8 volts. You're really pushing it, and you may burn these out. So this is what I used, and I could not be happier. So we're going to open it up, and I'll show you how to do everything else. Alright guys, so I have all 3 of those screws out. This is the last screw, And I set a bowl right there because, you know, these screws are very small, and this is a magnetic screwdriver. It's nice to have because it pulls the screws out. You want to put them in something where you're not going to lose them. Okay? Now, like I said, I already did my antenna modifications, but here is the stock patch antenna, which is actually inside the controller, and it's hot glued in there. And here's the stock 2.4 gig antenna right here. It's a tiny little one, and that was also inside the controller like this, and I'll show you that. So once you get all the screws out, the cover comes off pretty nicely. And what's nice about this controller is there's no wires attached to the back, so don't worry about just pulling it off. It ain't gonna. A lot of controllers you take apart, there's a little wire attached here or there. So we'll set the back aside. Now remember, when you flip the transmitter over, your antennas are reversed, so you're looking at it backwards. This is the 5.8 gig, this is the 2.4 gig. Control antenna, FPV. Now you flip it around, it's different. Now I've already done the antenna mods, but see, this is why you need a hot glue gun, and you don't really absolutely need it, but I would recommend it. So because the size of these IPEX, this is an IPEX connection right here. This is the stock 2.4. It's so small, and it's very important to connect those correctly. All it is like a little clip, and I'll open up another controller to show you exactly how they clip on. But you basically, here's your stock antenna. It would have been like this, glued in there. See that little hot glue? It would have been like that, and it would have been the IPEX part would have been attached. I have some hot glue over it because right here, it would have been attached to that, but instead I have my wires going to a bigger dipole antenna. It would have been attached to this. This is the 2.4 gigahertz control module. Another very important thing, before you even mess with the controller, make sure there is absolutely no power going to this controller whatsoever. If you repeat after me, I will never turn my controller on without a 2.4 gigahertz IPEX and the antenna. If you turn on your controller and there isn't this hooked up, or you don't have the dipole antenna hooked up, you will burn out this 2.4 gig module, and you'll have to get a new one. And if you look closely, that is a lot of soldering. I wouldn't recommend doing it. So just make sure there is absolutely no power source. That's what the JST connector looks like when you open the back. I actually put a little bit of hot glue, because they are kind of hard to pull out. So I'm going to, get something to protect this so I'm not pulling on this too hard. Because as you can see, here's the double A's. That goes to a separate power spot on the board. Right there. Then the JST is right here. And you can see it's fatter wires. And I'm not sure why they wrote on here, but any which way. This board can handle 6 to 13 volts, supposedly, but I would not push it. So anyway, over here, here's the 5.8 gigahertz dipole, panel antenna. Okay. I already did the mod, and I used hot glue in a few different spots for a reason, because when you run electricity through any wire, it creates an electromagnetic field. That's also why people always, advise you to point your your dipole antenna kind of away from the panel antenna so you don't get interference between the two. Even though they're totally different frequencies, you can get electromagnetic interference. I also forgot to mention you are also going to need a drill with a 10 millimeter drill bit, because to do the mods you have to drill holes in the top of the front of the controller. And I kind of found out the hard way, but if you can see how, you see that little circle around the gold there, right up here? It's like a oval. You want to go in exactly in the middle of that. Now look at this one. And this is the 2.4 side. You see how I drilled it a little bit closer to the front? Well, that caused me a little bit of trouble. It wasn't a big deal, but you want to drill your holes exactly in the middle of this little oval, half oval thing on the front of the controller. So it's going to end up looking like that. And also, the reason I recommend hot gluing a lot of different spots is because, first of all, once you do your antenna mods, it comes in a kit. You have like a lock washer. You have another bolt that holds it, and then on the top you have the same thing, another lock washer, and then these need to be tight. I mean, once you need a needle nose pliers to hold these. There is a tiny piece of plastic down in here that's supposed to hold them, but sometimes it will just spin. That's not very thick plastic. It's almost like this controller was made for antenna modifications. You can almost tell. Because why else would there be... See that plastic right there? See, I drilled a little bit too close to this side. It should be right in the middle. Then that bolt, or the nut that holds that antenna, would have caught that plastic and tightened on its own. Right here. There's a little piece of plastic. But anyways, I route it. Once you have this, then this would be your stock 5.8 gig panel antenna right here. This also has what's called an IPEX connector. That just snaps right down into there. I have hot glue over it so you can't see it, but I have another controller where I can show you exactly, which I'm going to. So this is where your stock patch antenna would have been. It would have been hot glued right about there. And notice how it's inside the controller. I've actually seen, and he's a good, I like a lot of his videos. It's a guy named Drone Worship. He actually took his panel antenna that he got, a 3-phase panel antenna, and replaced it with the stock one, but just glued it outside of the controller. And he's getting just as much FPV signal and range. So, I mean, I don't know what the deal is with that, but, there it is. You have to drill two 10 millimeter holes on both sides. You may want to just make a little note for yourself because you are, doing stuff and you may forget. The right side is now the 5.8. The left side is now the 2.4. Take a little marker and mark that just so you don't do it backwards. If you do it backwards and hook it up, you're going to fry your whole thing. And remember, never power your controller on when the antennas on a 2.4 gig side is unattached. If it's not attached, you will burn this up. Guaranteed. So, didn't need to do a battery mod. It already came with a JST connector. You can remove these battery caddies. There's 4 little tiny, you have to use like a popsicle stick. You push it down in there and you kind of pull up on it, and there's one over there and there's one here. You see those little slits? I didn't even bother taking mine out because why fix what isn't broken? So there it is. The antenna mods. And I also hot glued them here because you do not want to get the wires in the way of where the screws are going to hold the back on. Make sure that these wires are not going to get crimped either by the sides or, where these connect. Make sure that. And I also kind of kept them separated. I didn't want, because these kind of came with long wires from the SMA all the way to the IPEX connection. That just snaps on. But I hot glue it just in case. Because, like I said, if this were to pop off on the 2.4 side, it's going to burn this up. And then you're going to be looking for parts. So I hot glued them so they stay away from each other. Because remember, electromagnetic field. Okay? And behind here is your screen. That's your LED screen. And I mean, there's not really much more you need to know. This is all just processors and stuff like that. And down here is actually the GPS module. That's where the GPS module for the controller is, right there. And I actually hot glued this too, because when I opened this up for the first time when I did my antenna mods, these wires were all crazy. So I glued them. I think it came off. Yeah, it did. But I glued them away because they were like almost twisted. And you don't want to twist wires, especially like a GPS module wire. Keep them straight. And you also don't want to get them too close to any power source because of the electromagnetic field. When you hook up power to this, you can't see it, but electromagnetic field is going to come off here. So I'm going to re-glue that. I didn't know that popped off. But there it is. 5.8, drill 10 millimeter hole. Use the little nuts that come with it. It's pretty self-explanatory. All you have to do to get the stock antennas out, it's just wiggle them back and forth, and the glue will come loose. There's the stock 5.8, and you can see there's still hot glue on here. And I'm not, with this kind of panel antenna, a lot of people told me these were no good. But guess what? I get better FPV with this controller. It never, ever, 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 ever cuts out. I mean, I've been very high. Even, at 400 feet, this has clear FPV. Now for the X4 Pro, I showed you that FPV1 transmitter. That's the advanced one. That comes with a huge, really thick Hubsan patch antenna. And I don't know if that's just all plastic and all that's in there is something like this. That's what I'm thinking. And the plastic that's why you need to put an external panel antenna, because the plastic blocks the signal. But I don't know what it is about this one. This is a BTG 14 dBi high gain panel antenna. And it also comes with a 3 dBi 2.4 gig control antenna. It comes in a kit. It's like $16. And I was going to go with those 3-panel open face ones from Banggood, but I got this from Amazon, and I cannot tell you it's worked amazing. It really does. The FPV never cuts out. It doesn't matter how far. I've got 1,000 meters with clear line of sight. I mean, not 1,000 meters high, but I've never lost FPV signal. And with the advanced transmitter, I am getting static. I'm getting all sorts of crazy stuff. It actually cuts out completely, and then, the signal comes back. So anyway, there's the back of the controller opened up. That's where your stock 5.8 gig panel antenna would be. And it's just hot glued in there. You wiggle it out. Boom. Drill your holes. Feed the wire through. You can optionally glue it, but just make sure it's not going to get in the way of these bolts for both sides, because that's what holds the back of the controller on. You pop them onto the IPEX. Well, that's the name of the connector. You pop them onto the 2.4 gig module and the 5.8 gig FPV module. Hot glue them down just in case, you could be moving around and they could pop off and then you're screwed. So it's that simple. That's where the stock 2.4 was. That's the excess glue. I just left it. There's no reason in fixing something that isn't broke. So there you go. Okay, so I basically showed you how to remove the internal stock 5.8 gig antenna. Just wiggle it. Well, actually, first of all, the first thing you do is use something very small or just your fingers and detach the apex from the stock panel antenna. You don't want to be ranking around on that just in case when you're wiggling on the antenna and it comes off, you do not want to bend this connection. Same for the 2.4. The stock antenna is in here, and they even glued the wires over there. Unplug this, make sure there's no battery power. Unplug this, then wiggle that antenna loose. You can even leave it in there if you want to, but make sure that the little wire that comes off is not touching anything. And then go ahead and install your antenna kit. Connect the apex here and the apex there, and make sure they don't hit screws. And also, when I opened this up the first time, I told you about the GPS module. The reason I actually glued this too is because the wires coming off the 4AA battery caddy, they call it. It's just a battery compartment, but the proper name is battery caddy. These wires were like interlacing with the GPS module wires, and even though I'm not using the AA's, they're still connected to the circuit board. You can take them out. You can just reverse solder them and take this whole thing out, but you don't want. These wires were actually laying across the GPS wires, so I glued them to the caddy so they were out of the way, mainly for so I didn't get any interference from the power from the JST is powering the controller. But since these are still hooked up from the AA's, these are still going to have power. So make sure nothing crosses these two, connections if you're just going to use the JST. Alright, so then once it's done, grab the back and just put it back on. Goes on fairly simply. And guess what? I did it backwards. Anyways, you just put it back on. Make sure that your wires are not in the way of where the screws hold the back on. So just put the back on and grab your screws, tighten them up, put a LiPo or AA's, and then turn it on, make sure everything's good, turn your Hubsan h501s on, and check your signals. I made a video right after I did this antenna mod. I think it's the first video I ever made with the h501s. And all the functions worked absolutely great. Return to home, GPS mode, follow me mode, headless mode, they all worked really good. And that's it. That's as simple as it gets. Alright, so I put the back on and I tightened all the screws. And be very careful not to over tighten these, because they're just, you'll feel it when it gets tight, because they are very cheap. It's not very cheap, but it's plastic and you will strip them if you over tighten them. I actually found that when you put the back on, if you kind of just squeeze it as you're tightening the screws, and if you go in an X pattern, say like you start with this screw, hold the controller together as you're tightening the screw, then go up to the left and do the same thing. If you go in an X pattern, it seems to tighten a little bit better. So there you go. They're all tight. And there is the h501s standard transmitter with the antenna modifications. Very simple. Just take your time and do it correctly, and you should have absolutely no problems. And after that, plug in your power source, turn on your quad, check, make sure your FPV is good, make sure you got control, take it out for a flight, go low and slow. Don't go flying 400 feet right away or something. Make sure every function works. Okay? I'm going to bring out another controller to show you exactly how the IPEX pop in and off, and why the hot glue is so important, because this other controller I have, which is for not that helicopter, or not that one, that police helicopter, I don't have it out here, but I'll show you why hot gluing that is a very good idea. Alright, so here's the other controller. This is the LP5 DSM. The DSM actually stands for it's a brand name Spectrum 2.4 gigahertz DSM technology, and it comes with DSM to this transmitter. And this transmitter is for a helicopter, a quad prop helicopter that also has a swash plate. But I'm going to open this up because this also has a 2.4 gig dipole antenna with an IPEX connection in the back. And I wanted to show you why hot gluing the IPEX to the 2.4 is so important. So I'm going to open this up. Alright, so I have the 4 screws out of the police helicopter transmitter. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now this is why you got to be careful with some transmitters. Not the Hubsans, the standard transmitter is fine. But when you take the back off, okay, I'm about to lift it up, you really have to be careful that there are no wires attached. In this one, you see all those wires? Now if you were to pull straight up on the back, you're going to mess stuff up in there. I mean, this is a really complicated controller. It's got, potentiometers all over the place. And the main reason that those wires are up on the back is because that little switch is for sharp turning. And then you have right here, you can actually plug in for a trainer, because flying helicopters with swash plates is very difficult. But anyway, back to the point. If you just yank this off, you're gonna disconnect all these wires. But if you just look at where they go, they do unplug. But I'm not gonna unplug them. See how they're just kind of sitting there? This is why. Alright, so here's the dipole antenna. This is the 2.4 gig antenna. See how long this wire is? I'm thinking about using this. I routed it back way here. The silver one is the 2.4 that goes to the dipole, and I rerouted it under all these wires, because what I found out is, look at where it ends up. There's your 2.4 gig control module. Well, look at this. I can literally grab, I'm trying to show you, grab this IPEX connector, and that's what's going to come with your antenna modifications. Actually, this whole thing moves. There's the IPEX, here's the wire coming down. This is the same thing on the Hubsan. They just kind of pop right off. You see how easy that came off? Here's your IPEX connector. And did you see how easy that came off at the 2.4 gig control? That's why I suggest when you do your antenna mods on the h501s standard transmitter, when you're plugging in your aftermarket antenna, IPEX, plug it in and put some hot glue on it so it can't pop off. I don't really use this controller anymore. That police helicopter has some issues. I could fix them, but you know, it's getting to the point where I'd just rather buy a new one. But this controller is really cool because it's a bind and fly controller. But I just wanted to show you the importance of the hot glue, because this IPEX connector can very easily just pop off of the 2.4 gig controller module. And if that happens, you're going to burn this up. And you don't want that to happen. And these IPEX connectors will come with any antenna mod kit you buy for the Hubsan h501s. Just remember, some people don't even use super glue, but you know, you're moving around, you're out in the field flying, and if this pops off while you're flying, you will lose total control of the quad, and you will also burn this up. You'll burn up the 2.4 gig control module, and then you'll be screwed. You basically got to get a new one. You have to have somebody really good at soldering, resolder it all. This controller is different than the h501s, but I just wanted to show you the importance of hot gluing this little IPEX connector that comes with the antenna modification kits. When you snap that on there, I'm gonna put it back on. Make sure, it's hard to do and show on the camera at the same time. Make sure it's flat and level, and basically just make sure that this IPEX connector is very flat and level with the 2.4 gig controller. Grab it, okay, and just pop it on there. You'll feel it click. You'll feel a little snap. And then take your hot glue gun and hot glue this to your 2.4 on your Hubsan controller, so it can't just pop off. I'm not expecting it to, but you never know. You drop your controller or something, it could pop off. So that's the importance of the hot glue, and that's why I hot glued mine on my h501 standard transmitter, because these IPEX connectors are very small, but they serve a very important function. So when you put them in, make sure they're flat. Snap, you'll feel a little snap. They're in. They do rotate. You can rotate them while they're connected, but after you do your mods, glue the IPEX connectors. You can glob as much glue on there as you want. Just make sure they don't pop off, because if they pop off, you're screwed. Okay, so that wraps it up. And then, like I said, after you do your antenna mods with the h501s standard transmitter, go ahead and power up your Hubsan and make sure everything works. Okay? It's Mark here, and a lot of people asked me to make this video. I'm sorry I couldn't show you exactly how I drilled the holes and everything like that, because my mods were already done. But with all of this footage, I think you get the point. Alright, till next time, see you later.